Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Once Upon a Time in PatORG, the podcast where we will be speaking with the players voted out of this All Stars season. I'm your host, Nico, for today, and with me is none other than Peter. How's it going, Peter?
It's going all right. I'm sad to be on doing the interview this early, but all good things come to an end, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah, always gutting to be that close and then just fall short, unfortunately. So I'm sure we'll have plenty of chance to get into that. So, as I mentioned, it is an All Stars season coming into it. So, I can imagine there's a lot of thoughts and anticipations regarding that when you get told that you're on the cast. What were your sort of pre-season expectations? Like, who did you either hope or hope not to see, or maybe just expect to see in general, whether it be your season or otherwise?
Um, I felt like I kind of came in an interesting spot because I didn't really spectate any of the seasons after mine, and I mean I played way back in seasons 17 and 18. So a lot of these people are a lot newer, and I think a lot the PatORG community has grown a lot, and I think a lot of them probably knew each other coming in. The only people I really kind of wanted to see or didn't want to see, it was cool to see Caleb out. I wish he could have been more active early on. I know he had and camp to start. It was cool seeing Andrew. Wish we could have maybe worked together a little bit more, but obviously we both know how big of threats we were. Would have been interesting to see Court out. Obviously, Court. I have more admiration for Court than almost any org player I've ever played with. One of the best players I've ever got the experience of spectating or playing with. Learned a lot from her, but at the same time, it would have been scary seeing her out. Besides that, I didn't really know anyone from the newer seasons. I will say that I have semi connections with Daniel and Jess, who were both on this cast, and I was excited to see them and absolutely devastated I didn't get to play with either one of them.
Right, yeah. So it's interesting to see that you can have obviously the org community is quite large, so you can have connections with people outside of the people from this own All Star season. So, speaking of Court, is that someone that you feel like you would have tried to work with, given your sort of admiration for her, or what would that relationship have been like?
I mean, that's a good question. I remember she was playing in a different org, and I just happened to be in the channel. Someone invited me. I don't know if I applied or exactly how I ended up in the channel, but they asked who in the channel do you not want to see on the cast or whatever. And she made some joke about how she didn't want to see me because she was afraid I would instant target her. Um, I mean, I would like to work with Court, but also I know how good Court is at the game, so it's someone that you don't want to potentially leave in too long. But if she has your back, she has your back all the way. Who knows how it would have went down if she was on the cast.
Yeah, there are so many alternate timelines when it comes to these games, especially in a season as stacked as this. So maybe, as you mentioned, so your seasons were 17 and 18. So, or I know you, I think you played in even. Was you playing 13 as well? Am I right in thinking that?
No, I think I was because this was just my third time.
Okay, my mistake. I don't know what I was getting confused there with. So for maybe those for people who weren't familiar with your original games, do you want to give us a little bit of a recap as far as what your paths and journey was like there?
Sure. So season 17 was my first ever org. I had never heard of orgs before. I didn't know they existed. You get a random message from this Pat kid on Reddit saying, "Hey, do you want to play in this online survivor game?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" He's like, "All right, you need to find someone to play with you. It's a blood versus water season." I hit up my best friend in real life, Nick, who I recently got hooked on Survivor during the pandemic, and we just decided to end up playing this. I ended up going out at the pre-merge boot. I got big move-itis. Well, actually, someone on there was a joint tribal. It was three tribes, and two of the three tribes were going to go to tribal. And someone on my challenge threw the challenge in order to protect his loved one. And I was like, man, I just that's not something I want to be dealing with. So I tried to vote him out. It just turned into this whole mess where I ended up getting voted out instead. Really disappointing, but I learned you can't get big move-itis in these games. Did a couple orgs in between, and then got invited back for season 18 for a captain season, along with two other pre-merge boots from different seasons. And I end up forming a super strong majority alliance with Court, Andrew, and Caleb. And not to sound cocky, but I pretty much ran that game from start to finish. We just pagan the other side. Sure, it couldn't be too entertaining for spectators, but then go to Final Tribal Council and lose to Caleb, who won every single individual immunity challenge that season, and he lied his ass off during Final Tribal Council. And if you ask him, he'll tell you that I probably should have won that season. But fair play to him. Like he played a hell of a season, and I Amanda Kimbled Final Tribal Council in that season.
Right. So yeah, that's great to hear a bit of a recap to give maybe people who are less familiar with your original game a bit of an idea. As far as anything, did you see any maybe comparisons or anything that you thought was like completely different this time around? You mentioned obviously learning from your first game about potentially big move itis. How did it kind of inform this game for you?
I mean, I've played in a handful of orgs now, and every time I learn lessons and I take away new ideas and try to adjust my game accordingly. Um, the player I am was this season is a completely different player than I was in season 18. This cast was way more stacked, and like I said, in season 18, I basically just got to play from top the whole time and was never really ever in trouble until Final Four, where I had to go to fire. But I basically was always just in the majority alliance for the most part. I did have one idle play that kind of shifted the game, but this game I was kind of in control during times. I was the swing vote during times. Come to find out, I was on the bottom during the swap for a good portion of the game. So I just kind of have learned through my org career how to play through all aspects, if you're on the top, bottom, or in the middle. So this game was drastically different than how I played in season 18, because it was just put in different positions and I was dealt different cards.
And I think that's what can make All Star Season so interesting as well. You do see the potentially either similarities in people's games or potentially things being completely different. So it's always fun to track what happens there. One of the twists for this season was the pre-merge Hollywood sign. What were your thoughts on that whole thing?
Um, with all due respect to Pat, and I know he put a lot of work into that. I personally was not a huge fan of that game element. Um, I feel like the challenges at the sign were, at least the one challenge I did was damn near impossible. Um, and I don't know, it almost just, especially with everyone just choosing random each time, it almost just seemed like a random person on each tribe was getting individual immunity at tribal council, and like it affected the game in the sense that like there's a good chance that Justin might have been the first boot from the game if um, he didn't go to the sign. And I know it, like when I went to the sign, like it had a big impact. And I don't think any of the twists themselves had a big impact. I can't be for sure, but like no one took up the mutiny deal. I know when I sent the extra vote to Andrew on the Justin boot, that the extra vote had no impact. I can't say about either of the other two times the twist came into play, but overall, I mean, I get it. It was a cool concept. I just was not a personal fan of the game mechanic.
And that's completely fair enough. So you obviously have mentioned there was a bit of a varied journey potentially for you in this pre-jury segment before hitting the merge. Do you want to run us through a bit through about how you saw the game through that portion, how you felt about how things were going?
Oh, sure. So, you look at the original tribes, and when we had, I think I was MGM, yeah,
Hmm.
and I kind of, so my like kind of strategy, and I know you're probably going to touch on this later, but my strategy coming in was to try to play more under the radar, low key. One of the areas I always struggle on in orgs is threat management, which obviously for anyone that watched the season knows that I struggled with that again. But I felt like I was doing a decent job pre-merge of kind of managing my threat level. Early on in the original tribes, I made the Compass Alliance with Sarah and Gabe. Then we had a five-person alliance with me, Sarah, Gabe, Stan, and Beluca. And I think I had a three-person alliance with Beluca, Stan, and me as well. I think I did. I might not have, but I kind of found myself being able to slightly push votes in the direction I wanted to. Sarah had the idea of making some big moves, flushing the Lucas idol. Without being too pushy, I was just kind of slightly trying to keep her away from doing that, which helped me get out. I wish Caleb could have been more active, but like I couldn't protect him at that point, so Caleb, Justin, Jaden was about as perfect of a boot order as I could have had in original tribes. And then obviously at Swap Tribes, I got extremely fortunate. I didn't go to a single tribal council. I either won immunity at all of them, or the one time my tribe lost immunity, I went to assign. Uh, I think in the first swap, I was in an okay position. Me and B had a really strong connection. I had somewhat of an onion alliance with me, B, Chris, DeLuca, and Justin. Hard to say what would have actually happened if we went to tribal. And then in the second swap, turns out I wasn't in a great position, but luckily never had to go to tribal. Who knows if it would have been me or Stan that went if we lost. But Chris told me that part of the reason he threw the challenge was to keep me safe. So I think I was in an okay spot.
Yeah, so as you say, you managed to kind of keep safe for quite a big portion of the sort of first swap onwards. So I can imagine that's quite appreciated when it comes to that side of things. So obviously, then you do make the merge. So obviously, at this point, changing the game, individual immunity challenges and whatnot. Uh, at the point that you arrived with the players that were there, obviously not being at tribal, you kind of weren't able to sort of like craft who was there as much uh, in deciding who would be with you. So how did you feel you were going to navigate with the people that were there? Like, did you have long-term plans of thinking that maybe there were specific people you were going to stay loyal to or wanted to take to the end? What were your thoughts about once you hit the merge about how the rest of the game you might approach it?
I honestly did not feel great coming in the merge. The people, if you would have asked me on day one who the people I wanted to have with me at merge, I would have told you Caleb, Jess, and Daniel. Obviously, all of them were gone. And then I made relationships with Justin and B. Both of them got voted off. So that left me with Stan, who I was glad to have Stan. Stan was a great ally in this game. Then I kind of had to. Oh, and then I also like kind of broke up the Compass Alliance, somewhat on purpose. When I told DeLuca that Sarah was targeting her, I kind of did that to hopefully help myself when I got to merge. So I kind of hope that DeLuca and Chris and that group might kind of have my back. Um, my plan was really just to. I was trying to be more sneaky about it than I actually was, but I just wanted to paint bigger targets on other people than I had on myself. So like the first person that had to go for me was Shay. Shay was one. Shay didn't talk game with me until the day she left. And oh, all right, all right. And if you're not talking game with me, then you're probably talking game about me. So like Shay was someone that I enjoyed talking to a lot. We were in the same group on the first challenge, and I really enjoyed talking to her. But I just knew I was not in her long-term plans, so that's why I had to have Shay go first. And in order to keep the numbers, I had to get someone else out from that side. I went with EJ because EJ was one that I felt could kind of sneak to the end, and I wanted to leave bigger threats in, like Steven. So I just kind of I had to kind of play it vote to vote for a long time until I could kind of establish some footing. But I think the mistake I made is in the process of doing that, I think I became a huge threat, which was something I was trying to avoid. And then at a certain point, I just had to go into survival mode.
At what point would you say, if you've managed to reach that point, would you say you found your footing in that sort of sense then?
I think the Chris vote obviously was a big moment for me. Obviously, everyone knew Chris was a big threat in the game, and I wanted that move on my resume. And I kind of kept telling people that like we needed to wait until it was on our terms to make sure Chris went. If we would have voted Chris out the first two cycles, we would have just been going along with the seat alliance, and we probably would have been picked off shortly after. By getting rid of some of their numbers first, we took somewhat control. And when we took Chris out, it was on our terms. And I think I'm getting, I think I played a big part in that, and as well did other people. But I was the one that really kind of got the ball moving on that and getting people on like on the same page. And I think that was kind of when I found my footing. But on the other side, I think that's also the time I became a big threat.
That's fair enough. So, with that in mind, did you have a particular set of people that you wanted to take to the end to kind of either manage that or either to be? What were your plans as far as people you could see yourself at the end with, or people you specifically did not want to take?
That changed at different points. For a good portion of this game, I wanted to take Stan to the end, and then I think it was either Final Six or Final Seven. It might have been Final Eight even. When I heard Stan wanted to differentiate his game from me, and in the way I read that, that was just code for he no longer wanted to go to the end with me, and that makes it challenging to go to the end with someone that doesn't want to go with you. Um, there was points where like I would have been cool with going with DeLuca, um, because I really enjoyed her and I thought like it would have been close between us. Um, I think near the end, like I made a final tribal council agreement with Nelson, and I have no idea if he was going to honor that or not. But I would have put near the end, I would have put my resume against anyone. So I was just trying to find anyone that was willing to go to final tribal council with me. Let's say I would have won Final Four immunity. I probably pick Henry and Stan. Um, just because I think Talia is the biggest threat, and Talia probably, I think Talia might have even beat me. It's hard to say for sure, but Talia is someone I would have been a little worried about going with just how well connected she was this game.
Right, and so obviously you are our sort of fallen angel for the season, so to speak. So, how did you feel about your particular round where you ultimately go home? Anything you kind of look back on and maybe even leading up to that point you wish you slightly did differently, or what are your feelings?
Pressing the three key instead of the two key.
Mm,
Um, like I mean, the challenge where I just pressed one wrong number and it cost me 5 points was, or I guess 4 points because I would have had 17 out of 20. Was literally the difference in me winning and losing that challenge. I just pressed one wrong button on the keyboard. A little bit about my org history. I've been the Fallen Angel in like 50% of the orgs I've played. Which I mean, on paper you're like, wow, that's really good, but man, it's like super devastating to like get this far, put all that work in, and then all one vote shy or like one round short of being able to like pitch to the jury. I've only ever been the final tribal council once. So like it sucks. It's a gut punch. I'm gonna be upset for a while, I'm sure. I don't think game wise I could have done much different because if I lay back early on, I probably don't make it as far as I did. But in order to make it as far as I did, I had to become a big threat, and I get why they voted me off. I talked to all three of them yesterday and basically begged them to give me a chance at fire, and none of them were willing to do that. So, um, it sucks. I'm devastated, but that's part of the game.
yeah, and I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, it's very understandable what you say, especially if that's kind of a road you've been down before, and if your only final tribal is literally from the game you've returned from as an all-star. So I can understand the feeling there. Any other sort of standout moments for you as far as the season goes, whether it be other sort of maybe low or high points, or just things that yeah, just stick out for you?
I mean, winning two challenges was huge for me. I had never won an individual challenge in PatORG history, and then if you count my entire org history, I think I've only ever won like three before this season. Um, like I was super happy to get a couple challenge wins. Um, Also, I'm just overall proud of the game I played. I mean, I played a really hard game at Merge. I basically dictated every single, or I shouldn't say dictated, but like the person I went after went home almost every single time, besides when I tried to vote out Stan. I had a near perfect voting record. Overall, like I'm really proud of the game I played, and I think my thumbprint is all over like this season. So
Well, that's at least some sort of consolation. I know it's obviously can make it all the more hard to swallow when you don't get to pitch that game to the jury. But congrats on making it as far as you did. Um, and yeah, so it does mean that the people left in the game now are people who will be getting to make that case. So, what are your feelings towards the people left at the end now? Do you want to give us a bit of maybe a brief description, or maybe how you feel about the three of them, and maybe what your ranking is going into Final Tribal about who you're probably most likely to vote for? Yeah, just hear about that.
sure. So you got my right hand man Stan, who played an incredible game. Has the only one with a perfect voting record left in the game. I think he went to every single tribal council except for one, maybe. Um, just absolutely like, and I mean, I think he kind of played under the radar. Like he was a huge part of like my strategy component before I like got votes moving in a certain direction. Me and him would talk about every single vote about what's best for us moving forward, and like it was a 50-50 partnership. Like his input was just as much a part of who went home as mine was, and I think it helped that 95% of the time we were on the same page. um so immense respect for Stan and the game he played. I think his biggest problem is going to be convincing the jury of that. I think that I saw more of his social game than other people. I don't know how well he connected with everyone, and because he played somewhat under the radar, and I took a lot of the credit for votes, or I don't I didn't mean to take credit, but that's just how it worked out. I think they're not respecting his game as much as they should, and I really hope he can change that, and I really hope the jury gives him a fair shot at Final Tribal. Talia, obviously, super social player. Talia is the only player in the game that I wanted out and was never able to make a move on because of how well connected she was. Me and Stan both said, I think at probably Final 10, Final 9, like, hey, like, Talia is a huge threat, but we can't get her out right now, but we need to try to work on that. And it just, the numbers never worked because of how close she was to Chris and Andrew, the two power players on opposite sides. Um, she was just untouchable for such a long period of time. I think my biggest problem with her is I need to understand. She played the middle, but I need to understand why she made the moves she did. To me, not all of them seem logical. Um, some of the non-logical ones that stand out to me is voting for DeLuca, and then telling she twice actually in the season voted for the person with the idol and told them that they're gonna need to play the idol. And when she did that to DeLuca, like her vote was the one that directly caused DeLuca to need to play the idol. Um, so I just need some clarification on why she did what she did. Then you got Henry. Henry, I think, probably has the biggest uphill battle coming in. I really like Henry socially, but I think I've heard other people had negative experiences with him, which is unfortunate because I really enjoyed talking to Henry. Um, Really cool dude. I think he also is going to struggle in the way that Stan is. I think sometimes played under the radar and maybe took a back. It's perceived that he took a back seat to other people. Um, also, it's so hard. I really I feel like Henry played better than I know, and I didn't get to see a lot of Henry's game. Me and Henry had a weird relationship where we would always be pretty straight with each other without leaking information, where we would just basically share here's what I'm thinking, without giving like a name or whatever. But I really need to understand why he did what he did and how he did what he did. Like, how did he get to Final Three, and does he understand how he did it, and was he just a goat? As far as who I'm leaning Stan right now, and I think that I'm probably going to be one of the only people. I'll be fairly shocked if Talia doesn't win. But Stan, on top of just being my right hand man all season and like a really good friend that I hope to like continue talking to after this game, I really do think he played a hell of a game, and I hope that he can show that at Final Tribal Council.
And then if you had to go like second and third in terms of who might be able to, like, if for whatever reason you were not able to vote Stan, who would you then probably lean?
That's really close for me. Um, I'd probably put Talia second. I don't know. I think I'm a lot more open than most people are on the jury. The sense I'm getting from Ponderosa is most people are pretty locked in on what they're thinking. Um, I'm fairly open, but if I had to say a second right now, probably Talia.
Okay, I appreciate that. You mentioned almost 50% of your all games have ended in this spot, which is unfortunate, but I'm guessing also means that you're no stranger to deciding on who to vote for in a winner. So you've mentioned kind of wanting to understand people's sort of motivation and why they made the moves they did. Is there any other sort of consistent criteria that you feel like you look for in who you decide to vote at the end, or do you feel like it can be on a case by case basis?
It's hard. So like, I mean, I have a really weird like theory when it comes to org juries. I feel like a lot of times the underdog wins in orgs because people come into Final Tribal Council looking for a reason to vote for the underdog in most cases. I think this one's a little bit different because the runner is pretty well liked. A lot of times the front runner isn't well liked. Um, so I think a lot of times org juries go in looking for a reason to vote the underdog. So I try not to have that mindset where I just kind of try to go in with a blank slate as much as possible. But really, it is kind of what I said before of like on the surface, we saw what happened. We saw the moves that people made, and we kind of have a general idea of what the general way they got there was. The things I want to know is the how and why, because that's something that you can't always just see by spectating a season or sitting in Ponderosa. Um, Understanding someone's motives for what they did, does that make sense? Did they play a logical game? Um, Stuff like that. And then also, like, social is a big part of it. Like, how much do I like someone? I nothing against Talia. Talia is a great human and obviously had a fantastic social game, and a lot of people loved her. I just happen to connect better with Stan and Henry than I did Talia. I had more in common with them. So like that will influence my vote. At the end of the day, it's a popularity contest, and you don't. I don't think you should just vote for who your friend is, but it does play a part. Everyone comes in with preconceived biases, and if it's close, like yeah, I'm gonna vote for my buddy.
All very understandable things that you've said. So, thank you so much for all those like thoughts and kind of getting into the nitty gritty. Is there anything maybe we haven't touched on that you feel like would be important or nice to chat about that hasn't been covered already?
Oh, I don't know. I just really want to like commend Pat on the casting of this season. I mean, only a 24 person cast, only two of them, to my knowledge, were slightly inactive, and like this cast was just filled with fantastic players. I mean, some of the people that were going like pre-merge are like would win most seasons. I mean, you look at people like even pre-swap, like Jaden and Justin played like were playing good games. Like it's this cast was just absolutely stacked, and I think obviously a lot of people are gonna wish they did better than they did, but a lot of people should be proud of how they played this season. I think.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously with the placements of the people in the cast, so many people were unfortunately going to do worse than their original season just by the virtue of that. So I think it does speak to kind of the quality of the cast that we got. And yeah, thank you for being part of this season, and thank you for being willing to talk about it with me as well.
I absolutely appreciate you taking the time to interview me. I hope your rest of your interviews go well.
Thank you, Peter. All right, well then, if there's nothing else, this has been Once Upon a Time in PatORG, and we will catch you for the next one. Bye, everyone.